time to print, so I've got my computer with me. Well, the title of my sermon today is Koinonia-WEM style. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I'd like to say thanks to everyone. I think I remembered that, when was that? A couple of weeks ago. My wife had a surgery, appendectomy, and there was an offering that was asked for the congregation, the second offering, and it was brought to by Pastor Don and Alex Shin-Young. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And then after the sermon, my family and I won't be able to join you with the potluck because I need to go back to the church where I'm serving. We're promoting English camp. So right after my sermon, we have to go straight back to Suwon-dong, and that's a little bit far from here. Okay, WEM presents a challenge to anyone who would pastor this church, and it has its own characteristic. It's kind of unique, you know. I'd say it's common here in Korea, but it's all of these common churches which have multicultural audience or congregation. It's a little bit of a challenge for anybody who would be ministering to this kind of thing. Let's see how I think WEM is marked as having some features not found in a regular church or city village. I mean, regular village or city church. If you agree, say amen, and if you disagree, just say nay. So here it goes. That's the text. Let's go to the other side. I don't know if this is working, it's too far. Okay, there you go. Now, these are the features that I think makes WEM kind of unique. It is multicultural, so you have the Koreans and Koreans, the brothers and sisters, Koreans here, and then you Gentiles. Filipinos, Americans, Chinese, South Africans, British, Australians, and Vietnamese and Chinese. My great-grandmother is Chinese. My mom, my wife's grandfather is American, pure. And then my father and brother's citizenships are Canadian Filipinos, so they're Canadian citizens. I'm Filipino, my passport is Filipino. And concomitant to this is that we're multilingual in varying degrees. Some are Korean nesses, like native English speakers. I got to check my time here, everyone. I need to be here 25 minutes. And then English nesses, English native speakers, native English speakers, okay. NKSs, native Korean speakers. NESs, native English speakers. NCSs, native Chinese speakers. NTS, native Tagalog speakers. And NDS, native Dutch speakers. And many others. There, right? Dutch. So that's your first language, I think, or you have English as second language or Dutch second language in South Africa. Anyway. Third, there are varying social classes with our various experiences within and outside of those social stratifications. Relevant here are expectations as an outsider of those within each social groupings. We have perception of those people outside of our social groups. And most of the time, we behave according to those perceived stereotyping, without any reflection or risk-taking whether they are valid assumptions or not. So if you're looking at people who are cliquish or groupings with the same race or same social class, you have a kind of perception of what they do, and you may feel that kind of don't belong to that one. But every perception that we have may be correct or not be correct. So sometimes it needs some challenging. Multi-denominational church practices, Baptists, Koreans, Presbyterians. I started with the Assemblies of God, moved to Christian Missionary Alliance, jumped to the Southern Baptist, and then moved to Evangelical Free Church, and now I'm with the Presbyterians, so kind of mixed as my race is. Transient. 5 years here in WEM, and I've seen a lot of people who have come and gone. Never got to know any of them, a lot. because I was working in a different church. So these are the unique challenges that we have. WEM is multicultural. It's multilingual, various social classes, multi-denominational, and transient. So these traits often offer a unique challenge to us professional ministers. By professionals, I mean, of course, you understand that those trained and have had experiences in dealing with the pastoral ministry, and certainly not meant as experts. There is none. A minister would have to continually face life in all its rawness and simplicity, complexity, suffice it to say. From a cursory reading of the text that we have just looked at, we can only deal with the first one, which is Acts chapter 2, verses 42 to 43. Some things stand out immediately, and we shall mention these briefly and one by one later. And in the meantime, let's focus on what is Luke's aim with the text. Acts chapter 2, verses 42 to 47. There's something magical, but not necessarily unique, that happened during those days, the time that was recorded by Luke in the book of Acts. I had a chance to teach American history during the American Revolution. I could imagine Paul Revere riding on horseback with two others, warning the militia of the coming British Army. And the whole spirit where everyone thought something great was about to happen. The creation of a separate and independent self-governing nation. The air must have been electrifying, culminating, of course, in the announcement that the war was over, even though there continued great, almost insurmountable challenges ahead. In my country, it was when all the people marched to the streets to topple a 20-year dictatorship. They just went there facing the tanks. I know this is not what happened in China, but in our country, all the peoples marched and they ended the 20-year dictatorship of a strongman president. Or the Civil War, Martin Luther King Jr., what do you call that? The Civil Rights Movement, okay, thank you. The Civil Rights Movement, where many have sensed God was on the verge of doing something really great. They sensed that God was on the side of those who fought for the equal treatment of kidnapped and sold African slaves, more than 1.5 million of them originally, that have become part of the fabric of American life. What does it feel? How does it feel? Certainly during the time of Acts, there was something great, a long-standing, longing, deep, fearfully awe-inspiring event that took place. And all these happening right in front of the early followers of Jesus. And if we look at the text again one more time, Luke codified those experiences in a letter. Hear me out. Perhaps learning from Paul and seeing it for himself, he wrote in Acts that God foretold in the days of old the coming of the One. God has finally fulfilled all the hopes and longings of Israel. It was a sense of exile. You know, they had this sense of exile. They had the sense of being cast out of Israel. They were no longer a people of God. And this sense of exile that not connected to God, God had abandoned them. This was the kind of exile that they had felt, and that's part of the milieu even before the coming of Jesus. He has finally fulfilled all the hopes and longings of Israel. It was this sense of exile that would end and never-ending bondage from one superpower to another, beginning with Egypt, Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, and then at that time, the greatest superpower of all, the Romans. That God would one day, in His faithfulness to the promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that there will be the coming one. He's going to come. He's going to end this exile of Israel. And they will become one more, the people of God. You know, if you see the excitement of, if you watch the American Revolution, or, you know, You're Americans, some of you, a lot of you. There's this electrifying experience. You know, we're not going to be subservient to the British government anymore. We're going to make our own decisions. We're going to own our own economic policies. Something exciting. You got to fight for it. You got to die for it. And that's really something that they felt. So, they felt that before the coming of Jesus, God will end their exile when the Holy One will finally come, and they will be God's people one more time. And Luke testifies, okay, here we go. Sorry for those. This is just the introduction part. It's going to be 25 minutes. And God will end their exile when the Holy One will finally come, and they'll become God's people once more. And Luke testifies that the early church discerned. Okay, the early church discerned and actually felt that the God of Israel is showing once again God's, take note of this, they really felt that it was God's covenant faithfulness that had finally come fulfilled with the pouring out of the Spirit. God is fulfilling the promises of prophecy through the death and the resurrection of Jesus, the Messiah. I remember Michael Douglas Smith back in the early 80s. He was singing, "Could he be the Messiah?" Who remembers that old song? Oh, you were young. Could he be the Messiah? Could it be the Messiah? Oh, it was, you don't know it. Okay, some of you were nodding your heads. Back in the 80s, you were still elementary kids. Could it be the Messiah? Beginning with a question as to, could this man be the Messiah? Could he be doing some miracles? Hey, he's just carpenter out there. I don't know this guy. He was just son of an, he's got a lot of brothers. When the Messiah comes, we don't know him. But this one, I know him. So, and then the song ended with the final declaration, it is he. The song was singing, could he be the Messiah? Could it be the Messiah? And then finally the song says, it is he, the Messiah. So it finally come to a conviction that this guy is indeed the long-awaited Messiah, which is a fulfillment of God's covenant faithfulness. It's a long time, it's a long, long time. They've heard about that when they were exiled, they were kicked out of Babylon, they were kicked out of Israel. Where is this covenant promise? Or even during the time of Jesus, of Egypt, was saying, okay, what's happening to this promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Where were they until they forgot it, like in the mist about the ring? There was a rumor about the ring, Lord of the Rings, suddenly it becomes a reality. From a story to becoming a legend, and then somehow it's just a mist in history. That's what happened in Egypt, and they finally realized that this covenant faithfulness of God, as we find it in our tradition, is really true. And they witnessed this in the ministry, death, and resurrection of Jesus. It has come. There's the excitement about it. If you're not excited about that, because we were not part of the early Christian church. So how do we recover that kind of excitement? How can we go back to that? See, that's the main question when we're dealing with early Christianity, talking about the Bible, when we're so far away from that milieu. We have our own concerns now. So, let's see. The followers of Jesus' response, okay, as we see now in the book of Acts. Number one, we're going to look at the text. Number one, they gathered together, all right? When they gathered together, this is what happened. They have a sense of genuine community. Fellowship, in the Greek, with a definite article, indicates that they felt themselves, they saw themselves, their self-identities, that they are a kind of special community. They're not the kind of community that was like the ethnics. They were ensconced there inside the cave. No, they're out here. Not yet. That'll come later. That will come later. Not yet. You're revealing some of my secrets. I can't see much. And this special community is not just an ordinary part of Judaism in that day. But many communities are gathered and they kind of gathered together. Their proclamation of Jesus as Israel's promised Messiah and mankind's Lord set them apart in Jerusalem. That's what makes them distinctive. There are many groups that were meeting, secret places, in public, but what makes this particular group special, the gathered community, the Koinonia, is their proclamation that, you see that guy who was crucified, remember him? He died. He died a criminal death. And then you're proclaiming him and he's the Messiah? Well, I'm going to stone you to death by saying that. Nobody would believe such a criminal would become the Messiah of Israel. That's impossible. And yet, those who did not believe, James, the brother of Jesus, who else? A lot of them who did not believe until finally Jesus showed his brother James, I'm here. They broke bread. Break bread had been used by Luke in other places as an ordinary meal, here in the book of Acts. But it may well be filled with the meaning of the Lord's suffering and promised return. Of course, Jesus was with them, and those disciples who were finally preaching, they were saying that when they were breaking bread, everyone, 3,000 of them, God saved, they were sharing what Jesus has shared to them. I will come. This is my body. So this meal is not just an ordinary meal, but breaking the bread is not just a ritual for them, this is for us as well, but a densely profound acknowledgement that Jesus' suffering was for the forgiveness of sin and the ending of the sense of being not the people of God, an act of covenant faithfulness. Can we repeat that like tarhaseo? Covenant faithfulness. Yes. That vocabulary should stick in our minds. Covenant faithfulness to the promises that God has given. We are not just gathering together. We're not just coming here every Sunday, but let us be fully aware and fully convinced that we are living out the covenant faithfulness fulfilled by God in the Bible. We are living out that faithfulness. We are here because of that faithfulness of God to His covenant. It is not just gathering here, oh, we're going to go on Sunday, and we're going to sing, and then we're going to... No. This makes us a unique community. And this gives us a sense of purpose for this congregation. Why are we here? There's got to be a reason. I must have something to do here, not just warm the seats. Of course, it's not that. So, prayers. The prayer life of Jesus in the church, look in his design, literally made an intentional parallelism between the praying practice of Jesus and the praying practice of the early church. He took note of that. Let's say the book of Luke was written around the late 60s, or some are saying the 80s, but this documented the fact that if you see the prayers of Jesus, as we know it from tradition, and the prayers of the early church, they are the same. Then there must be something that was in the practice of Jesus that seems like a paradigm for the prayer of the church. Because Jesus was always communicating with the Father. Jesus was acknowledging that he has an intimate relationship with the Father. So more than anything else, the prayer of the church is a communing with the Father who had been faithful in his covenant, and now they're living it out. So let's say we are the people of God, WEM. Though Gentiles we are in continuity with the true Israel of God, heir to the wonderful promises given in God's faithfulness. All things in common. When you see this, it is actually the practice of thought. The practice is thought of in the Greco-Roman milieu as a feature of an ideal friendship. When you put things together in common, when you make things your property and his property, mine is shared with everybody, that in Greco-Roman thinking is the ideal friendship. and the Christian community was practicing it. In other words, they were practicing, the church was practicing the highest ideals. Luke shows that the church puts the highest ideals into practice. Selling your property wasn't required, but here, listen to me. It was a natural outgrowth of a deep sense of belonging where mine is yours, and if you need more, let me share you everything I have, kind of thing. We're not supposed to share sell our belongings right at this point, but it is a natural outgrowth. If you go to Gwangju and then, you go to Gwangju and then you ministry to the kids, it's not because you're forced. It's because this is an automatic thing that's bubbling up in you. You eat here, and you don't have any food, and you eat here, you're not required to help. But because this is a special community, I love this community, I'm going to help. No one's going to point a finger at you, eat, and then work. Not that kind of thing. It's too stern. But if you eat, you're sharing a kind of covenant faithfulness that we are together as the people of God. Man, I'm going to help with the tables. Give me two. I'll roll him down the stairs. I read somewhere that there are 200 people in America. 200 people in America that are at the 2 trillion mark. 2 trillion mark. The $2 trillion people. Okay? Now, not to mention the others who are did not make it to the 2 trillion. Marilyn, Mallory, Gloria, you went around. Gloria, you must have had a lot of money. Are you there? Your name is on the list? $2 trillion. And it says that you put together all these people, not one is going to be hungry anywhere on earth if they pool their resources together. We don't have to have $1 trillion to end poverty. We can, this is where I like, I keep forgetting names. He's the ex of Brad Pitt. Angelina Jolie. She says, and this has impacted my daughter, she says, one too many, one hungry person is one too many. I agree with that. There shouldn't be anybody suffering and from hunger. I'd like to have that 2 trillion. But of course, I will never have that for the life of me, never. But at least as a Christian community, knowing that we are a product of God's covenant faithfulness, it's bubbling up. I'm going to give my money and do this, use this for whatever our community, at least for the limited things that we can do, at least we're doing something. One hungry person is one too many. Awe and wonder. Awe and wonder. Well, this is the appropriate response of the people. Awe and wonder as appropriate responses to God's presence seen in action in our lives. The awe and wonder that characterized the early church remind modern believers that authentic fellowship with God includes a humbling awareness of God, the Eternal One, there before the beginning of the universe, God in the midst of us human mortals, and of God's wondrous deeds in interrupting our ordinary lives. It is awe and wonder. If we have lost that sense of awe and wonder, every day we live, every day we read the scriptures, every day we breathe. These are, we're going to go to the beach. It's for our pleasure. Thank you, Lord, for the wondrous water. Thank you, Lord, for the souls that saved. These are all the wondrous gifts to us of God. And every time you remember that in Scripture, every time you see the brothers and sisters here, there are, if you see that it's just less than 60 people, 60 of us meeting here. Remember, all around the world, this is happening. It may be a different time zone, But man, there are millions and millions of us. And we are all recipients of God's covenant faithfulness. So, can we change to the... After saying that, now I have a few suggestions for WEM, and when did I start? Number one, today. Reflections on WEM. Before continuing with the message, let me just read, you don't have to read the text again. Look at this one. I have 4 proposals that I'd like to propose for WEM with trying to remember our 4 characteristics. Multicultural, multilingual, concomitant to that. We're multi-racial, multi-social, different social backgrounds, economic situations. We are different denominations. Okay, I didn't mention, but age groups as well. Okay, Dawn and I are seniors here, and who else? Sorry, Dawn, I drag you into this. Number 1, my proposal is for a committed core. If you can see this, I preached this before here. Now, this is Rick Warren's. I forgot what you call this, but let us identify people who are here. It's a task of leadership to sort out the people who are going to commit. And those who are committed, be aware that you will have to spend some time and money at times, not all the time, but you got to be ready. And these core committed people, there are a lot of people here who are willing to go the extra mile or two to really serve the WEM, specific WEM community. Number 2 is, can you go to the 4 proposals? Back. Can you go back? There. Move forward. Maybe move forward. Go down the slide. Next. There you go. Rick Warren also, in his book, Before Purpose-Driven Church, he has a monthly recital of purpose. Don, you have an assignment. You have a monthly statement of purpose. You have a statement of purpose why we're here. And people kind of forget a lot of these. But when you come here and then recite this every month, it works for Rick Warren. That we're going to recite why we are here, what we're doing here. Why are we worshiping specifically here at WEM? You got to recite that. Imbibe that spirit. We're here for a purpose. Next, a multicultural groupings with paired multi-facilitators. When Jesus sent out the 12, they were paired. So if we're going to group together after the service, they're sitting on a table. I really pray. I've been praying for this for such a long time that Americans are sitting in one group, the Filipinos are sitting in one group, the Chinese are mixed together, Koreans are mixed together. My vision is for this genuineness of community, regardless of race, that the people are sitting together around the table, the different races. And the people who've been facilitating them will not just be Americans, it could be multiracial. It could be a Filipino and American, it could be, and then they could be like, Facebook friends and try to nurture the relationship. They're facilitators, they're not leaders. They facilitate and they join and enjoy, overcome the transient distinctions that we have here on earth. And be a true expression of the people of God. And then prayer portals. We post something of prayers in Facebook. I suggest that somebody would be monitoring this and then follow up. What's the update? Okay, Amy, thank you very much. I tried to update and hear some news about the fire in, where's that place? Vancouver. And she gave a map there. It's very helpful because northeast of that is Calgary, which is where my dad is. So, knowing update on the prayers. When you are seeing prayers and prayers are being answered, it's a kind of encouragement. And that's the people of God. Many times my wife and I, we were just looking back at some of the accidents and circumstances that we see. There are accidents. There was an atheist that say, everything that's happened here, answered prayers, those miracles, they are just accidents, coincidences. And then this simple guy says, I'd rather be here in the Christian faith. There are so many accidents. Don't you agree? Coincidences, but actually they're the hand of God. I believe when you look back. So, intentional WEM ministry. With the core group that we have gathered together, you reflect. I'm going to end here. Those of you who are in ELT, English language teaching, took some courses or whatever, VSOL or CELTA. If there is one rule about designing courses or even performing in the classroom, it is that everything that you do there should be based on a decision that is being informed by second language acquisition, best practices, and some other things that apply to linguistics. Teaching English as a second language is radically different from teaching English as a foreign language. You have to design classes. You have to design. Why are you doing these choices? These choices are based on informed decisions so that it will impact the students and create a learning points that the students are going to pick up the language. I'm going to finish. Why can't we do that in the church? It should be purposeful. Why should we position the people there? Why are we giving this? Everything should be questioned, not questioned in a bad way, but there should be reasons why we're doing things here at WEM, and particularly within the specific context of WEM. We are multicultural. And consider that when you group together and you look at the group at all Americans, what is that communicating to our multicultural groups? I'm not blaming people. I'm just saying that that is not possibly the best example of a church. So, thank you very much. And I hope that we will remember one word. We are living out the covenant faithfulness of God. And why are we going here? It should be an intentional ministry, service to God. Beginning today, and I'm sure you've been doing this. Let's be awed and inspired by what God is doing in our midst. Amen.